Energizer. It was a cloudy day in the city of somewhere. The city had fallen silent with the air cold and wet. Here our hero was, saving the day again. But this time he had to face the most dangerous villain yet. "You'll never save the city in time," said Joe. Joe was a supervillain with a super genius brain. He thought the only way for the world to be perfect was to destroy all of it and rebuild it in his vision. Our hero was here, in the warehouse where our villain was, attempting to stop him. Our hero, Energizer, was standing in the middle of the large warehouse, waiting for Joe to stop talking. He heard over his radio that Cabrick, his superhero partner, was sneaking around the nearby buildings looking for any civilians to evacuate before the inevitable fight started. She was using her power of creating fabric and controlling it to get atop of the buildings to help injured people. As she ran around, Energizer was making the air colder and colder, readying for the fight. "And this is why you can't stop me," Joe said. At this point, Energizer was tired of hearing what Joe was spewing and fired a blaze of flame at the man. "How about you just stop and we take you down to the jail? You know you can't fight back without a power, so why not give up?" Energizer said to the villain. "Oh, but that is where you're wrong, my energetic friend," Joe responded, while dodging the flash of flame. At this point, a loud retching noise started as the ground began to shake. Suddenly, the ground around Joe crumbled. Energizer saw a giant mechanical robot arm come out of the ground. He made a giant burst of flame, sending all the dust away with a huge gust of wind. He froze in place as he stared at what was now in front of him. There was a giant robot body, covered in armor and weapons. "Behold, my personal protective suit, meant to withstand a nuclear bomb blast," Joe announced. Energizer snapped out of his state of frozenness. He radioed to his partner to tell her what had happened. "You need to get anyone you can and evac this section of the city," Energizer told Cabrick. "What are you planning to do?" Cabrick asked quickly. She was already grabbing people and running out of the building she was in. "I may have to use a nuclear blast to get past his suit," he responded. She knew this meant that he could destroy the part of the city they were in, but he didn't want to hurt anybody. She ran even quicker, knowing that the area around this section of the city would get below freezing as Energizer absorbed the heat in the air to use in battle. As Energizer was talking to her, Joe had entered his suit and began the startup sequence. He had never fought the hero before, but knew he could produce all types of energy. He had built his suit to withstand a nuke, but didn't know if Energizer was stronger or weaker than one. His suit blipped as the screen said that he could fire a missile at the hero. "Why, Energizer, I heard you like explosions," he said in an evil tone as he pressed the fire button. There was a large boom as his missile hit its mark, blowing out the front of the warehouse they were in. As the smoke settled, Joe thought he had defeated the hero in one quick blow. Then Joe froze as he saw what was in the wake of his blast. The ground that Energizer was on was untouched, and Energizer was still standing, with his arms up to block the missile. "Impressive shot, but thanks for the free energy," Energizer said with a smirk. Energizer vanished in a flash, only to reappear behind Joe's suit, his hand glowing with a flame on it as he punched the back of the suit. His suit jolted down at the blow, but only moved around to hit a blow back. Energizer then zapped the bot's arms, temporarily stunning it, giving him enough time to get away and check in on his partner. "How far away are you from the warehouse?" Energizer asked quickly. As he said this, the rest of the warehouse exploded as Joe began to slowly speed towards him. "Not far enough to safely survive a giant blast," she responded. Hearing this, Energizer turned around to catch the incoming robot. The second he turned around, Joe fired another missile, but also kept speeding towards our hero. There was a third blast, and right afterwards he swung his robot arm as hard as he could at our hero. His arm stopped suddenly. Another huge blast of fire appeared as the Energizer stood there, stopping the suit's arm with his hand. The look of anger was on Energizer's face, as his other arm glowed a red blaze of fire. Before Joe could react to what just happened, Energizer hit the suit square in the stomach. Joe was sent flying backwards, going through a building that was in his path. Joe got back up and saw the most terrifying thing he had ever seen. Energizer, with a blazing inferno behind him. The air in front of him colder and colder as he stepped closer. Both his hands now begun to blaze red with flame. Joe began to prepare another missile, but was knocked down by a bright flash of red light. He saw Energizer holding his hand out, with a laser beam coming out of his palms. He then jumped, but there was an explosion right as he jumped. He came speeding faster than Joe could react, and hit his suit again, this time both making an explosion as he punched, causing the suit to fly upwards. Energizer flew up in the air and blasted the suit at another building. Joe landed with his suit upright, giving him enough time to catch Energizer's next attack. His metal hand caught Energizer's punch, causing the ground and buildings around them to begin to crumble. He grabbed Energizer and threw him away from him. "You can't stop me! I have everything in place to rebuild this world!" Joe yelled at Energizer. "We're out of range! Get him now!" Cabrick told Energizer. Energizer stood up from the rubble he was thrown in, his hand now glowing green instead of the red it was. He was hunched over, almost as if he was preparing something. Joe saw this and jumped away from the spot he was in. Energizer vanished once again, but the ground he was standing on exploded away from Joe. As Energizer had just jumped towards Joe's suit, he stopped right before Joe, holding his hand out. Joe realized what he was about to do. He was splitting an atom. He was going to make a nuclear blast, and Joe was the target. He put his suit's arms up to brace for the blast, but at this moment, Energizer blasted him. Cabrick saw the explosion and put a steel fabric wall up to protect the people she saved from the windstorm heading their way. The wind hit them, and it didn't seem to stop. She held strong against it, determined to save the people. At the center of the explosion was Energizer and Joe. Joe's suit began to shut down from the immense power it was trying to stop. "How? How are you this powerful?" Joe screamed. Energizer let out a battle cry and punched the suit. The suit was sent flying across the district they were in, leaving Energizer in the air. He flew over to where the suit landed. Joe was standing out in the open, his hair and dress suit a mess, his armor suit smoking. How? My armor was meant to withstand a nuclear blast. You can't be that powerful, can he? Joe muttered. He saw Energizer standing there, waiting for his next move. He started laughing, his laugh echoing in the empty city district. "You're not possible. No one could do something like that. I even calculated how much energy you would need to absorb to do something like that. Even with your power, you can't withhold that amount of power," Joe muttered out loud, seemingly as if he had lost his mind. Energizer just stood there, waiting. He knew he had to take this guy to the police, but what was he supposed to say? That his power was just something he had? Energizer saw the building Joe had crashed into beginning to crumble. It started to fall right where Joe was standing. "Look out!" he cried, moving towards Joe. But he had used most of the energy he stored up in the fight. He was too slow to get him. The building hit the ground with a loud crash. Energizer let the dust clear before seeing what happened. He rushed into the rubble, looking for the villain. He stopped, realizing what had happened. He stood still. He held his hand up, while tears started streaming down his face, and only one thought came to his mind. He was Energizer, the energy hero, saving people and stopping villains by absorbing and producing energy. He was here to save all, good or bad.